The world that we live in today is very far from perfect. In fact, many people would say it's a dystopia that we live in, and it isn't too far-fetched. While technology has certainly helped us, even almost doubling the life expectancy from the 1900s to the 2000s, it also becomes a double-edged sword depending on the person who wields it. Technology plays a complex factor in rising levels of anger and loneliness globally. In a recent global risk report, it is noted as a major cause of loneliness and social isolation by 58% in the US and 50% in the UK. However, it is noted that the same survey found that social media makes it easier for people to connect with others in a meaningful way, and that lonely people were no more likely to use social media. The time spent on our phones daily has become increasingly worrying, with a study in 2016 noting that nearly 1/3 of American adults never turn off their smartphones. Individual psychology and emotional problems can become collective concerns when loneliness and frustration meets populist and identity politics, an emerging reality in what is becoming known as the age of anger. A study done by American students published in Personality and Social Psychology Review revealed that levels of empathy in this demographic fell by 48% between 1979 and 2009. The possible causes of decreasing empathy include materialism, changing parenting methods, and digital echo chambers coupled with confirmation bias in which people only associate themselves with others that agree with them. We're drawn to a group identity in part from a place of belonging and in part from a very real evolutionary need for survival. Human beings aren't built to survive without group support. However, tribal identity was changeable and fluctuated throughout human history. Class grew into tribal identity. Today, there's a handful of tribal identities. Some are strong and some are weak. Our racial and ethnic identities tie us to groups in a deep way, while our allegiance to a sports team may be more fluid and less consequential. However, sometimes this tribalism can go too far. The worst type of tribalism is the creation of groups aligned to destroy other groups through ethnic cleansing and genocide. In our modern world, we use it a lot to refer to our politics or even morals. This gave birth to bad tribalism. This type of tribalism is joined by people who are motivated by anger, jealousy, and spite, rather than collective well-being. The irony being that bad tribalism is easy to create but bad for our health, whereas good tribalism may be difficult to build but healthy to maintain. This kind of tribalism is rampant in today's society, an example being the Democratic and Republican Party in America. Ideological silos are now common on both the left and the right. People with strict ideological positions are more likely than others to say that most of their close friends share their political views. Those with different political ideologies are often shunned by others and even ridiculed, something that is prominent in today's society. These prominence are not shared by all or even most people. The majority don't have uniformly political views, and most don't see any parties as a threat to the nation, and more believe their representatives in the government should meet halfway to resolve disputes. However, many of those in the center remain on the edges of the political playing field, usually distant and disengaged, while the most ideologically oriented and politically rancorous citizens make their voices heard through greater participation in every stage of the political process. This kind of loyalty leads people to consistently vote for the same party, even if the other may be more suitable for the country in the long run. But beyond the rise in ideological consistency, another major element in polarization has been growing contempt for the opposing party. To be sure, disliking the opposing party is not new and specific to politics, but today, these sentiments are broader and deeper than that of the past. In 1994, hardly a time of amicable partisan relations, a majority of Republicans had unfavorable impressions of the Democratic Party, but just 17% had very unfavorable opinions. Similarly, while most Democrats viewed the GOP unfavorably, just 16% had very unfavorable views. Since then, highly negative views have more than doubled. 43% of Republicans and 38% of Democrats now view the opposing party in strongly negative terms. pandemic we now live in only served to increase the division between individuals, and surprisingly, this division was more apparent in more developed countries. The coronavirus pandemic has increased social divisions across many of the publics surveyed. A median of 61% across all 17 advanced economies say they are now more divided than before the outbreak, while 34% feel more united. One source of these divisions manifests in how people view the social limitations they face through the pandemic, such as stay-at-home orders or mandates to wear masks in public. Sentiments are particularly negative in the US. 88% of Americans say they are more divided than before the pandemic, the highest share to hold this view across all places polled. A majority of Canadians also say their country is more divided. In Europe, majorities in 7 of the 9 nations surveyed say they are more divided than before the pandemic. Pessimistic views are particularly widespread in the Netherlands, Germany, and Spain, where about 8 in 10 report more division. Only in Sweden and the UK do about 4 in 10 believe they are more united than before the outbreak. Attitudes towards restriction and public activity are linked to whether people feel division. In several of the advanced economies surveyed, those who say there should have been fewer restrictions are more likely to believe their public has grown more divided than before the coronavirus outbreak than those who felt that there should have been more restrictions or that restrictions were just about right. In New Zealand, for example, 58% of those who say there should have been fewer restrictions on public activity also say their public is more divided, compared with 15% of those who say there should have been more restrictions. We as a society have also lost the ability to understand and talk to one another without senseless violence and yelling. One cannot disagree with another without attacking them or ridiculing them. Often than not, when we as people hold beliefs and values, we attach a character to them. We allow it to be us, when in reality, it's just a concept or belief that we consciously chose. Open-mindedness has become foreign in the world we live in, and we refuse to be wrong. We allow our pride and ego to drive us even if we know we might be wrong. Information can be easily controlled and censored by people who do not have others' well-being in mind. We prefer information from people we trust or are in our group. We pay attention and are more likely to share information about things that only affect us. We search for and remember things that fit well with what we already know and understand. These biases are products of our evolutionary past, and for tens of thousands of years, they have served us well. People who behaved in accordance with them, for example, by staying away from the overgrown pond bank where someone said there was a viper, were more likely to survive than those who did not. Modern technologies are amplifying these biases in harmful ways, however. Search engines direct people to sites that inflame their suspicions, and social media connects them with like-minded people, feeding their fears. Compounding the problem is a proliferation of online information. Viewing and producing blogs, videos, tweets, and other units of information has become so cheap and easy that the information marketplace is inundated. Unable to process all this material, we let our cognitive biases decide what we should pay attention to. These mental shortcuts influence which information we search for, comprehend, remember, and repeat to a harmful extent. Our cognitive biases also play a role in this, and these are extremely difficult to correct. Experiments consistently show that even when people encounter counter arguments from different perspectives, they tend to find evidence for what they already believe in. And when people with divergent beliefs learn about topics that are emotionally charged issues, such as climate change, they become even more committed to their original positions. Lack of education in certain topics only further fuels division, most commonly seen in social media. The world is full of misinformation and content designed not to educate but to garner as many clicks and views as possible. Reliable news outlets and good journalism have long died, only finding small websites online that aren't afraid to distribute information that the media is scared to deliver. Even so, these small websites continue to be censored and monitored by the government, keeping their hold and control over the populace. We have to remember that we're all working towards a better future and a better life for everybody. The only thing we disagree on is what that looks like. However, we can all agree that nobody is going to have their personal utopia without there being cooperation between each and every single one of us. The world continues to encourage an us versus them mentality, But let's not forget the point of it all: to improve our lives and the generations ahead of us. It is easy to get lost in all the politics and social media, but hold steadfast and try to understand everybody. As I write this script and make this video, the conflict between Russia and Ukraine continues to rage on. Yet, we only continue to promote aggression when we have a clear model of what happens when it is taken too far. Maybe we'll never be united and we'll continue our spiral down into societal collapse. It's all up to us, and I really hope we all take the path we don't regret, for our sake and the future generations to come.